this video, we're going to look at two different ways to create GIFs inside of Photoshop. So remember, you can always use the table of contents to pick which method sounds the most fun to you. To begin, we're going to create a new file in Photoshop. And I'm just going to create a 600 by 600 pixels square format at 72 pixels per inch. The reason why I'm setting up at this size is because I'm kind of thinking social media, and I want to be conscientious of the export file size. And we'll talk about that later. So I'll hit create, and here's our document. And so the starting point for this is to create a series of layers that reflect the final GIF image you would like to see. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is if you want things to animate separately, they need to be on separate layers. We're going to make sure that we have our layers window open, and if it's not, just go to Window and Layers. And I'm just going to have that floating out here so we can really see what we're working with. The two types of animation we're going to look at is frame animation and video animation. With frame animation, we'll create a new frame, make that the before frame, and then create an after frame. The motion for that will be created by tweening. The second option, video animation, we will expand each layer and set keyframes with specific transformations. So let's just get a little overview of some of the things you can do in Photoshop to create the look you want. The first thing is to place a photo. That can be done through File and Place Embedded. The difference between Place Embedded and Place Linked is the linked file would update. In this case, we're fine with embedding it. We won't be making any changes to that Photoshop file. So here's our placed image, and we can transform that. We already have a bounding box open. You do not need to hold Shift or anything like that. In fact, if you hold Shift, it's going to mess up the proportion. And then right up here in the right hand, we will click Check to add that transformation. So that's how you could start your GIF with maybe a photo. I'm going to go ahead and hide that layer and show you another method. So another method I could use is to just fill this with a background color. So I'll go to Edit and Fill. And I've got some colors already in my foreground and background, so I could use one of those. I can also drop down to Color and use my slider here to select a color, or if I know a certain code, I could enter that. And so I'm kind of thinking I like the idea of using kind of a reddish color for what I have in mind here. I like that kind of reddish pink color. That's great. And so we'll hit OK. So now I have my background filled. Other things I might want to add is a type layer. Grab my type tool and just note that if I click and hold, there's 4 different types of tools I have, so you can experiment with those. I'm just going to use my horizontal type tool. I'm going to click down and type. Now to style this, up in my top control bar, I have my font, the style, the size, the orientation. I can change the color. So let's say we want this to be a nice kind of orangey look. And let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay, now to move that, I'm just going to grab my Move tool here, and I can place that wherever I want. This is a good time to go back to what you learned in J300 or one of the Tech Tools classes about composition. So I'm kind of thinking I like things right there, and I might move that in when we start designing. Another thing you can do is add shapes. So The Shape tool is located down here, typically hidden under the Rectangle tool, and you can drop down to Custom Shapes. Up at the top, you'll see that you typically come in with 3 different types. If you would like more, you can open the Shapes menu. And so that's through Window and Shapes. And some of the shapes I like are in what's called the legacy shapes. And so if you don't see legacy shapes, just use that flyout and go to legacy shapes and more. So I've already added those to mine, and I'm liking the idea of using this kind of sun shape here. So if I draw and I don't hold Shift, I can really kind of skew that. But if I hold my Shift key down, I'm going to get it perfectly sized. Up here is my fill color, so I can experiment with different fills to see what I like. And I can add different sizes. This is where the creativity and your design comes in. Now I put those on the same layer, and I probably want to animate those separately. So let's look at adding a new layer. I'm just going to hit this plus button, and there's my new layer. So if I want to animate them separately, they have to be in those separate layers. And because they're in layers, I can move them around. So if I want this to be below that text, I can do that. Now I think we're doing something interesting here. And if I want to copy things, I can just Alt drag them, and notice when I do that, it creates a separate layer. To transform it or scale it up and down, I just hit Command T or Edit Transform, and I can transform that. So let's say that that is our starting point for our first GIF. To get started, we're going to open our timeline. Who knew that Photoshop even had a timeline? So we'll go to Window and Timeline. And here we have the option, if we drop down with this arrow, to create either frame or video. We're going to start with the frame animation. So I'm going to click Create Frame Animation, and there's my first frame. Now we need to build that before and after look. So to add a second frame, I'm just going to hit this plus, and so it added that second frame right there. Now these are exactly the same, and I'm going to say this is where we want things to end. I'm going to go back to frame 1, and I'm going to make some edits to this so that we can see some changes happening. So let's start looking at some layers. So I'm going to start with this first sun, and notice I have this propagate. So propagate means I want it to be the same on frame 1 and frame 2. In this case, I don't want to do that. I want to make some changes to it. So I'm going to move that off, and we can already see it's not there and it is there. And let's go to summertime. And let's say that we want summertime to just kind of gently come in. So we're going to change the opacity. Again, we'll uncheck Propagate Frame, and then I'm going to change it to 0% opacity. For this sun, let's say we're going to scale it up and down. So we're going to start it here and make it, oh, I forgot to propagate the frame. Let's just go back, uncheck that propagate frame. We'll move this, and we're going to make it almost the entire frame, I think. Okay, I like that. And we're going to say this little sun is going to come in. And so we'll uncheck propagate, move it in. And if we want, we can even change its color. That sounds like fun. Let's do that. So I'm going to go over to my appearance, and we're just going to pick that yellow color. Okay. So now we're ready to move from this to our final look. So I'm going to hold my Shift key down, and I want to add those tweens. So here are my tweens. I'm going to click that tween animation frame, and I can decide how many frames to add. Now, these are frames. If you think about a GIF, frames per second, I'm kind of a big fan of 10, so I'm going to add 8 frames in between there. It's going to move in all of these effects. I'm going to hit OK, and let's just play this. So pretty cool. Now, if we want to make any changes to these, we certainly can. So if I come into this sun, and let's say I want it to have an effect. Let's find an effect that's going to be interesting here. Oh, that's kind of nice. Okay, so now we just added another change, and it's going to bring in that full color. But it went a little too fast. So we're going to shift and click all of our frames, drop down here, and we're going to say we're going to put 0.2 seconds between each frame. And let's play this. Great. So there's our first GIF. Now, we're going to hold off on exporting it until we finish our second example. So let's take a look at doing our video frame animation. And I'm going to go ahead and start a new document just so we can start out fresh. And in this case, I am going to use that photo. So we're going to file and place it. And again, we're scaling it. No need to hold down Shift when we scale. Grab our text. Another way we can work with text is to select it from the image. So you can click on any type of color that you see in the image and use that as a starting point. And let's go ahead and use our sun here because we're going to do some different things with that. Again, holding down the Shift while I drag that. Move it below our text. We're going to kind of create kind of a logo situation here with this. And there we go. And again, I could change that color if I wanted to. So this time we're going to create a video animation. So I'm going to drop down here, click Create Video Timeline, and then click Video. And so note that each of these each layer can be seen right here. So this is how I'm going to animate each frame. So I'm going to go ahead and close my Layers panel because I don't need that right now. And make some choices with what I want to do. So I'm going to say I want our photo to kind of fade in. So I'm going to click the stopwatch right here. And actually, I do need that Layers panel for what I want to do. So at that point, I'm going to say this is going to be 0 opacity. And we're going to just go in 15 frames. And then we're going to have it be 100. So here's what that timing looks like. Just like that, really quickly. Okay, so I like that one. Let's go ahead and animate our sun. So I'll open that up. And let's say we want to kind of add an effect to this one. So we're going to click Style. Now, if I wanted to do something fun, I could kind of experiment with different styles in here as well. So maybe at this point, we're going to change it to that. So now we kind of have this like little flicker look here. So that's fun. So let's look at our final text here. We'll get those closed up. And we haven't done a let's see, we can do a transform on this. So we'll say that for this one, we're going to have it be a lot larger. And maybe over here. All right, so let's play our animation. And so there we are. So we've just created frames, and we could go a little further on that if we wanted to. So those are the two different types of animation you can do. Let's go back to our first one and let's export this one. Now, before we export it, let's talk saving. It's a special little trick. Let's say that we like this, but maybe we need someone to see it and they're going to approve it. So we want to make sure to maintain our layers. If I have the last animation frame selected and I save this as a Photoshop document, I'll be able to open those layers and reanimate it. Let's go ahead and export this. So we're going to go File, Export, and I really like to use the Save for Web Legacy because I get a lot of information there. And so here's our Save for Web Legacy. And one of the things I like about it is down here I can see how large my file is. So I'm going to choose a GIF. I can choose the number of colors. So if your size is a little bit big, dropping back your colors is not going to make huge changes, but it is going to help your file size a little bit. I'm going to maintain transparencies. All of the rest of these settings are great. I want to make sure that my animation looping is forever, not once. And I can click the preview button and preview this in the browser. So I'm ready to go ahead and save this out. So I'll click my Save button. And it's going to export out. I'll just choose my folder and hit Save. And so now I've saved out a GIF. I have the Photoshop document to come back to. Another tip for you. Let's say you want to send this out as an MP4. You can go File, Export, and Render to Video. So have fun creating your Photoshop GIFs.